Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. Chief Justice of India DY Chandrachud is in the headlines for a statement which he made at his paternal village. And what did he say? He said that while hearing the historic Ayodhya Ram Mandir dispute, he sought help from the God to find a solution. And I'm going to quote exactly what he said. I sat before the deity and told him he needs to find a solution. And then he said this while on Sunday, while referring to the Ramjanmabhoomi-Babri Masjid dispute case. But since the time this statement has come out, people have started saying that should the judges talk in this manner? Should the judges wear the religion on the sleeve? Is this a violation of the constitutional oath? We'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me now is former Patna High Court Judge, Ms. Anjana Prakash. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. We have Puneet Nicholas Yadav, who's a senior editor with the Federal and follows also the courts very closely. Thank you so much, Puneet, for joining. And I'll begin with Justice Anjana Prakash. What would you really say to the statement made by Justice DY Chandrachud? According to you, does this look like a violation of the constitutional oath?
Most definitely, the listeners be informed that there is a certain format of oath which judges have to take before taking the chair. And that says, that I am to uphold the constitutional principles, etc. So apart from that, that you decide on the basis of constitutional principles, I don't think you can look anywhere else but the Constitution for deciding a matter. However, having said that, we know for a fact, that there are lots and lots of complex cases which has a bundle of facts, or sometimes they have, principles of law which have not been enunciated as yet. But what happens is that, even when evolving a principle of law which has not yet been looked at, what happens is that, you apply those facts to the constitutional provision. And it is only on a clear factual matrix that you decide the case. Law is another side. Once you got the facts together, then you apply the law on it. It's not the other way around. And therefore, to say that I look to God for deciding the matter is rather unfortunate. But this is not the first time. If I remember right, there was another retired Chief Justice who had confessed once that his judgments used to be written by Sai Baba, by God, the God man Sai Baba. So I mean, like, this is almost laughable. It's so dramatic, so filmy. How can it's like those Dukhiya Bicharis that we see in Hindi films. Suddenly you are like distraught, you don't know what to go, and then you go to the temple, and then you ring a bell, and then you sit in the corner and you sing a song. It's like that. I mean, like,
No,
who would think that?
right. But Justice Prakash, what I want to ask you is that should the judges be talking so openly about their more inclination towards a deity, or like what he did? We saw him doing a Ganesh Aarti also along with the Prime Minister, and then suddenly now he makes a statement that, I sought the help of the deity because it was such a complex issue. Now, should the judges be vowing or taking a vow with the constitution, or now they're talking about taking help from the god? Now this is what something which is beyond comprehension. I was doing a few Hindi programs, and I was trolled in the morning for why we are criticizing Chandrachud. Now, shouldn't we be asking this question, that what on earth compelled him to make a statement like this?
The last thing that you narrated about you being questioned, why you should ask about this, why should you blame him, etc. I would say, a counter question should be asked. Would they be saying the same thing if a person of another faith had said this and decided the case according to his faith? Would they have taken it lightly? Would they have condoned it? That's the answer to the to the observation. The first thing is, you said that whether he should be saying this or that. I am a little actually a step further. I think he should not have been believing it. Even believing such a thing is wrong. When you say something, you may say it lightly. You may not really believe it. It may not be a lie. It may not be, a full truth. But the point is, you lightly say so many things. But how can you believe such a thing? That God would guide you to write a judgment? And which God, please, may I ask? There are so many gods that we look up to. Everyone has, a different God in the sense that you have faith in him. Just as, that the other judge had faith in Sai Baba. So what God are you talking about?
No, but does it also go to show that through this statement, he has given more primacy to the supreme power or the God or the deity rather than giving primacy to the constitution?
There are two ways I would look at it, One is, that somehow the other, since the decision was in favor of the majority, I would think, he tries to validate the judgment that he had given for the majority and, blames it on the God, that it is God who said this. And therefore, I wrote this judgment. That's the thing, I you have to take, when you write a judgment, you have to take responsibility. Until now, people were still speculating as to who had authored that judgment, their judgment, which was, very surprising, because the proper format of a judgment is this, that whoever may write the judgment, he writes, and after that, the rest of the judges, they sign and they say, I agree. So there has to be a definite author for the judgment. Now, according to Justice Gogoi, he said somewhere that we decided we'll keep it, anonymous. Why anonymous? There should be full transparency of everything. And it's the Supreme Court, which is insisting, and on whose insistence actually laws were being made, about right to information, etc. People were pushing for these laws through the Supreme Court. And then you do the same thing. Why should it be anonymous? Everything should be transparent. Once you're in a public domain, you need to be transparent. And therefore, this, you can't really take it, lightly. This is unfortunate. First of all, not taking responsibility for it. And secondly, saying that it is God who's, made me write it. And therefore, it is sacrosanct. I mean, there are certain things I feel very strongly about. One of them is this, that we tend to regard judges as somebody who are superheroes, who are, gods themselves. But actually, that is not true. It's the work that they do which is, divine. They are not divine. It's the work that they, that they do is divine. Now, suppose, the Constitution gives them these divine powers to write the judgment. Suddenly you say, no, not the Constitution. It's a God which has given me divine powers to write the judgment. Can that be justified?
Ma'am, do you see this as a contradiction? Just about a week back, we were seeing stories about how the statue of justice has been changed. The blindfold has been removed, and then in one hand there is a constitution, and then just a few days later you have Justice Chandrachud talking about this deity from whom he sought some powers to write the judgment. Is this a contradiction which you see?
How empty? No, it's not only contradictory. It is, such empty things that are being said, and they're manufactured. These alternative narratives are being told endlessly so that you start believing in it. But the point is that here you've written a judgment and you say that you've not written a judgment according to the constitutional principles, but as per the dictates of the God. And on the second hand, you go and say that this is a temple of justice or whatever, the lady of justice. She has a constitution in the hand. The very same constitution which you have disregarded in your judgment, which you admit to disregard. I'm not saying that we are making this allegation. He admits to it. After he admits to it, he says, that the lady of justice has a constitution in her hand. Aren't these things, absolutely empty formalities? These are narratives, I don't want to say false narratives, but these are narratives which are populist in nature. Too populist, to be accepted, to be taken seriously.
But
But
would you attach,
unfortunately, people don't question, so it's just taken, in everyone's stride.
ma'am, you are much more senior than Justice Chandrachud. You have many
Absolutely.
more years of
Much
experience.
older. Mhm.
What are you hearing in your circle? There are many reasons, and there are a lot of speculation which is there, that attaching some political ambitions to what Justice Chandrachud is saying. I would not go into those details, but what are you hearing in your circle?
Yes, yes. In our circles also, everyone's talking about him being overambitious. And I keep thinking, since I'm a very satisfied person, very complacent, I seem to have achieved everything. He seems to have achieved more than anyone else. He was the youngest judge. He was the youngest chief justice. He's been a chief justice for so long, the longest tenure. I would think, after this, what else is there? What else is there? Thankfully, Neelu, as I said, this the judiciary is not a monolith, and therefore people are not going to say, okay, the Chief Justice of India has said this, so we'll also do the same thing. It's not like this. Thankfully,
So,
everyone has a mind of their own, a conscience of their own, and an
but
adherence of their own.
after listening to you, can I be candid enough to ask you that, do you think the statement which was made by Justice Chandrachud is something which is unwise, maybe immature-ish? How would you see this? And then I'll go to Puneet.
Certainly not mature, certainly not mature, certainly not wise. Both of them. I mean, like, I didn't expect the Chief Justice of India to be saying such things. I mean, as I said, it almost sounds frivolous, like, it's a melodramatic kind of Hindi film scene.
All right. Now let me. I'll come back to you, Anjana ma'am, because I have to get in Puneet. Puneet also might have certain questions for you. Puneet, how would you really read this statement made by Justice Chandrachud? People are saying, what has happened to him just before the retirement?
You see, Neelu, the Chief Justice is going to retire very soon. You asked if, what has happened to Justice Chandrachud all of a sudden. I don't think anything has happened to him. Read any of my pieces on, from the time when he was a judge of the Supreme Court and, then eventually the Chief Justice. I don't think anything has happened to him. He is doing what he's unfortunate to say this, and maybe wrong of me to say this, but what he's best at. He's playing to the gallery. He, it's a rather unfortunate thing to be saying this about not just some random judge from the judiciary, but someone who's on the highest position of the judiciary. That we've and this has now sort of become a trend over the years, that you have all the preaching from the pulpit when you're not in the court. And the current Chief Justice of India is a great one for that. When he goes out for seminars, convocations, all these functions, there are a lot of things he says which which had in a way raised a lot of hopes about him even before he became Chief Justice. And people thought, this is the CJI that India has been waiting for forever, and he's he's going to deliver us from all sorts of evils. But then a judge, at the risk of butting into or adding to an answer that Justice Prakash has already given, you asked Justice Prakash earlier on about the Chief Justice's conduct in his statements and all of that. See, we've seen the last few Chief Justices. I don't want to go into specifics, but we've seen the last few Chief Justices. We've seen several judges also of the justices of the Supreme Court, who by their conduct as judges have been, they've attracted a lot of criticism because of the brazen manner in which they conducted themselves, even at the bench, and they were reviled for it. The current Chief Justice of India, unfortunately, may not have been reviled for most part of his tenure as a judge, But he's someone who's beguiled a huge number of people by not what he has done as a judge, but what he's done outside in seminars. Now, justice is not dispensed at seminars, justice is dispensed in the court. And now, closer to retirement, it's okay, it's obvious, it's natural for him to be very reflective, of what he's done. So earlier this month, while he was in Bhutan at another seminar, he talked about how his mind is so preoccupied these days. And he said, my mind is very preoccupied. These days, there are questions that swirl in my mind. I think what my legacy is going to be like. I think, have I achieved what I set out to achieve? I think, what kind of judgments I have delivered. So I think in that same reflective vein, when he went to his village, that reflection kind of, was a bit louder than one would have expected. And, he was speaking in public about it, wearing saffron clothes and whatnot. And he goes on to say that he asked the deity. Now, again, as Justice Prakash said, which deity? I hope it was, one would wonder if it was the deity who was a petitioner in this case, because this case also had a deity who was a petitioner. So was he asking that deity whether I should rule in favor of you or against you? I mean, this is the worst form of mockery of the judiciary. And the most unfortunate part is it's coming from the Chief Justice of India.
True. Ma'am,
that's all that one can say.
Absolutely. And Puneet has been covering the courts. He's been writing a lot about Chief Justice of India, Chandrachud, and his verdicts. Ma'am, as a judge, do you really feel let down? You feel that, the values of the judges, where has it got reduced to? I mean, I'm just talking to you, heart to heart. As a judge, how do you really feel when you listen to statements like these? You feel disappointed? You feel dejected?
Disappointed? I feel sad, deeply sad, and anguished, and of course disappointed. You know why? Because we always were made to believe that the judiciary has to be preserved by those people who are in the judiciary. Either it be the lawyers or the court clerks or the bench clerks or the judges. Together, they form the judiciary, and it is they who are supposed to uphold the majesty of the judiciary. And no amount of attack from outside can crumble or crush the judiciary. It's only people from inside who can actually harm the judiciary. And this is what has happened to it, So I'm sad about that. Nobody else is attacking the judiciary. Nobody else is saying, that this particular judge, he decided according to, the God's will and this and that. It is he himself who is admitting it. So what do you say to this? It is he himself who's belittling the judiciary. Because this institution that we think is so majestic. Thankfully, it's not solely, solely resting on his shoulders. Thankfully, there are lots and lots of other judges, and of whom, we are truly proud, who are still sitting. Some of them have retired. They're still upholding majesty as per the positions they held. Let's not mistake this, A judge is not, anything but a human being. He's a human being. Please let us remember this. And he should also, deal with himself as though he's a human being, not usurp the entire judiciary as though it's, it's an institution to which he has to leave his legacy. Come on. You've just, one speck. If you look at, the history of the judiciary right from independence, do you think, there are so many chief justices, so many judges who've done such good work. So, I mean, to think, that any of them would be bothered about legacy that they will leave. Do you think, Justice Khanna thought, H.R. Khanna thought, by dissenting, I'm leaving a legacy? No. He acted as per the constitutional principles.
Right.
And that's what leaves a legacy, nothing else.
Right. Ma'am, I have two more questions and then I'll let you go because I know you're in a hurry. Uh, One question, of course, is about the statue of justice, which has been changed completely. I would want your reaction that do you think that the justice is going to be better delivered after changing this look of the statue? Because it was being said and it was being projected that, those colonial memories have to be wiped out. So we need to bring out this new statue of justice. What is your view
See,
on that?
there is such a scramble for change, for the sake of change, that it is meaningless. Whether the statue is looking like this or like that, do you think an ordinary litigant knows the difference? A common man for whom the court has been built, who needs justice, is he bothered about the statue of justice being blindfolded or having a constitution in the hand? Does it have all these symbols, do they have any value to them? They hold no value. What holds value is how you dispense justice in the court. That's it. The statues, whether they do, they may be beautiful, they may be upholding all the principles of the constitution, but if a judge is not doing so, the common man is cheated. All this doesn't have any meaning. Sake for the sake, change for the sake of changing. All this is, this road becomes this road, this law becomes this law. What? Yeah, all eyewashes.
All right.
You need to change from inside.
Right. My last question to you, another statement which Justice Chandrachud made this Saturday, and he was saying that the role of the Supreme Court as a people's court must be preserved for the future. But this does not mean that it has to fulfill the role of an opposition in Parliament. Now, how would one read this statement made by Justice Chandrachud?
Neelu, let me tell you, I have spent long number of years at the bar. I was a judge, and after that, again, I'm practicing. I know for a fact, that every litigant is satisfied if the judge decides a case, even against him, if it is as per the law. But if he decides, even in his favor, on account of some other reasons, there are dissatisfactions. So all that you're supposed to do is this and nothing else. People are not bothered. So a common person, when you say he approaches a court for justice, which is unfair, and therefore that patti aankh pe bandha rehna, ki the justice does not see whether this person is rich or this person is that. It's equal for everyone. And that's the equality that everyone craves for. There are certain judges earmarked even today who are very strict. But they are strict, in all matters. They are strict irrespective of which case comes before them, irrespective of the lawyers who appear before them. So people don't grumble then. But if there are judges who may be liberal also, but who decide cases according to somebody's face or according to some extraneous reasons, they are not respected at all. Let me tell you this. And this is the only expectation. To end, I must say that I don't pretend to be the conscience keeper of the judiciary, okay? I also know that I'm fallible. I know I'm a human being. I accept it, okay? So what I'm saying is only because I'm elder in age and I think like this, and therefore, whether or not, it becomes, something which is sacrosanct or sacred and all that, I don't want that. I don't want to leave any legacy behind me.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, the last word to Puneet. After this conversation, Puneet, the last word to you.
No, well, I think, see, the point here is we already have one guy, one man who's running the country as per his whims because he speaks to God. Okay?
Yes.
We, please, for God's sake, we don't want the judiciary also to be run by a man who is speaking directly to God.
True.
Okay. Now, even if, let's assume, see, the thing is, now we're going into election season again. We've got Maharashtra and Jharkhand elections coming up. The controversy that this has now created and the reactions to it from the opposition, from people who critique the government or the judiciary on how the judiciary has become so committed to the executive and the ideology of the executive. I'm absolutely certain that when we go into the full-on campaign for the elections, whatever is being said to criticize the Chief Justice for his comments today will be used by the BJP to paint, the opposition in a certain light. Now, that's one thing. Leave all that aside. See, if the Chief Justice had said that this was a very complicated case, it was a very difficult case to decide, and nobody would have, of course, grudged him that, because it was a very difficult, a very fractious case to decide. If he had said that I sought wisdom, I sought guidance from the Constitution, I I would sit with the Constitution every day. I would sit with previous the wisdom of the collective wisdom of the judiciary. I would go through cases of which have been decided on such issues. No one would have grudged that, compared to what we've seen happening now. And if you are so worried about that you have to go to God to seek guidance, why are you seeking guidance with regard to specific cases? There is much more about the judiciary on which you may want to seek guidance. Look at the kind of backlog. Look at the kind of conduct judges have. Judges you have appointed as head of the collegium. Judges in the lower judiciary, in the high courts. Look at their conduct. I was reading the other day about a judge in Madhya Pradesh High Court who has uh, penalized a person who had been booked for raising a Pakistan Zindabad slogan. The punishment, I mean, I read it and I thought, that this is some kind of a satire or some, comic take on the judiciary. And then I was appalled to see that it's actually not that. It's the order where the judge of the High Court has said you have to stand in front of the national flag 21, salute it 21 times and say Bharat Mata ki jai. That is going to be your punishment. I mean, is this what the judiciary should be doing? And is the Chief Justice of India setting, what kind of an example is he setting for the other judges to follow? For other judges who may look up to Chief Justice Chandrachud. And even more dangerous is the fact that an open admission of this sort from the Chief Justice comes at a time when there are multiple suits across, courts and across states where, petitions, title suits similar to Ramjanmabhoomi-Babri Masjid, the Kashi Vishwanath case, the Gyanvapi Mosque case, the Mathura case. These are all similar cases. Now, you decide all of them based on faith and then say that, you were taking guidance from the deity. What is the message you're sending to the judiciary?
Absolutely.
So you can't see this statement in isolation. It has to be seen as a composite of all these things and what it means for the judiciary going forward.
True.
If at all the Chief Justice is worried about his legacy and is in a reflective mood, this is what he needs to reflect upon. What is his conduct doing? And look at all the great, of course, I mean, he's about to retire, so there'll be a lot of commentaries when he retires, so we'll perhaps save it for that. But, in a very brief, in a nutshell, look at all the judicial pronouncements that he's been part of. Now, of course, not all of them may be authored by him. And, since courts sit in benches of, 2, 3, 4, 5 judges. So, I mean, you can't say that all of these judgments have been written by him or these are all exactly what he wanted. But look at the judgments, the judgments that he's been party to or he's written or concurred with, whether it's the Pegasus case. Look at, of course, the Ramjanmabhoomi case. Then you have the electoral bonds case, where again the fine, he got applauded and all of that for bringing in an element of transparency there, and eventually the ban on the bonds. But what did it actually achieve? People who exploited that scheme, was there any action? Nothing. So then, I mean, there's so many of them. VVPAT, appointment of election commissioners, one after the other. So what do you make of all that? And then, towards so close to his retirement, he goes and makes a statement like this. Unfortunate doesn't even begin to describe it.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Puneet, for joining. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion: subscribe to our channel, send us a feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal.